Have you ever witnessed or experienced what it means to be poor firsthand?
Poor firsthand? Yes.
Can you explain that?
I was born in Las Vegas, and I lived there till I was 8, and pretty poor from day one.
Me personally, no, I never experienced none of that.
No, I never experienced that.
No. I never experienced being poor firsthand, and I really don't want to experience that.
Well, my day-to-day life is always having money on me, so I wouldn't know how it is to be poor, but just to imagine not to have money, it'd probably be hard. I think it'd be very hard, actually.
I mean, I'm not rich at all, and I do struggle. My family struggles, but I'm not like poor.
So I actually went on a retreat at my school called Urban Challenge that took us to Camden, and we interacted with a lot of people stricken with poverty, and it was I really took a lot out of it.
I went to Philippines one time during the summer, and I saw a lot of my family members and like a bunch of other friends in poverty. It's really sad.
I have some family members that live in shacks, like 6 people living in a 2-room shack.
My mom was like, take us places, and we'll end up like dragging our bags on the street and stuff like that. And we had no place to go, so we went to shelters a lot. I see people on the street that had their little cans, and I would like donate money to them, like give money to them. And I know how it feels.
In the United States, poverty affects nearly 37 million people, nearly 1 out of 8 families, a figure that continues to climb.
Many of these people work 2 or 3 jobs and still don't have enough.
According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the poverty threshold is a family of 2 adults and 3 children earning a total income of less than $24,130 a year.
Can you imagine trying to support a family of 5 on roughly $24,000 a year?
How can so many people live without in a country where so many others have so much? What can our generation do to help change this?
Poverty, that's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Jess.
And I'm Jack, and this is Realfaith TV.
Some of the teens on the street had first-hand experience growing up in poor conditions, while others had relatives in areas of the world where poverty is common.
We'll talk with them a little later in the show, as well as meet our studio guests.
But first, let's talk with our spotlight guest Stephanie, who will share with us her experience of growing up in poverty.
Let's hear her story now.
We were about 4 or 5. I was 4, Peggy was 5. And I remember waiting a very, very long time for my mom to get home so that she could feed us. My aunt was watching us, and I remember us waiting, and my aunt kept saying, well, when your mom comes home, you'll eat. Like, we had cereal, a bowl of cereal for breakfast, and then waiting like a super long time for my mom to come home with something to eat. We've always missed lunch. We had late breakfast and dinner. And then they started the little JPA programs, or I don't even know what the program was. The Board of Education started the little program in the park, and so lunch was covered. So we can bring breakfast a little earlier, go to the park to have lunch and participate in the games, and then wait for Mom to come home. There used to be these fairs on Perry Street. I don't know if it's still on Perry Street. I remember, though, that all the kids on the block would go, and we would constantly be in the house because my mom She wouldn't allow us to be, for so many of us, so one person that was taking care of us, which was usually her sister, my aunt, she didn't feel comfortable letting her go out with all 9 kids. So I remember when Mom did come home, we were able to go outside. Only when she came home, we were able to go outside. And we used to see the kids coming around the corner or coming home from the fair with all these balloons and things like that. And we're like, we missed it again. There were people who were a little bit better off than we were, because I would say we were right there in the middle. And then there were people who were worse off. And then there were people who didn't have anything at all. I'm talking about really seriously living out of a car, like they would come to school dirty. And my mom said to think about that, because this could be you. She was very good at letting us know that, it could be worse. Oh, you don't have any lights right now, but it could be worse. Oh, you didn't get that toy for Christmas, but it could be worse. So we were just taught to feel that we have what we have and be blessed that we have what we have, because there are people out there, and even on our block, that was much worse off.
I don't have any direct experience with poverty and growing up in poverty and everything, but I do know all about having a lot of kids and how that can affect your financial situation. My mom was the youngest of 9, so they always had to kind of do without. and they'd go to McDonald's like once a year, and it'd be a big deal when, like, you know, they'd go to McDonald's, get a Happy Meal or something, because there were 9 kids, and her parents couldn't afford to like buy them a lot of stuff, because that means you have to buy it for all 9 of them, you know. And it's kind of the same thing with my family. I'm the oldest of 5, so like around where I live, a lot of people go on a lot of vacations, and we really don't do that because it's like 5 kids, and it'd be tough, you know, to do that kind of thing. So I understand what she's talking about when she says that like a lot of kids can cause some financial problems sometimes.
You know, I really like what she was saying, you know, about what her mom said, you know, it could be worse. You know, I always find myself kind of feeling bad for myself, and I always have to think, you know, it could be worse. Because, you know, I look at her situation and see how bad it is. Like, they couldn't go to the fair. Like, I can go to a fair whenever I want, you know, and I still feel bad for myself. There are people out there worse off than I am, and I think we all need to realize that.
Let's meet our studio guests and see if they have any experience with poverty.
They are John, Phil, Keishi, Michelle, Michael, and Jillian.
So guys, have you ever experienced poverty or known someone who has?
I know that I have. I was able to go on a retreat, like somebody in the Teen on the Street was saying earlier, down in Camden at the Romero Center, and just being able to you know, spend a night there and then do work the next day, getting to make bonds with people and seeing the poverty they live in. You know, I made friends with so many people who are living in the poverty line.
Yeah, me and my sisters, we used to volunteer in soup kitchens, and we would heat the food and put the drink for them, and we would actually hand it out to them, and they were so grateful.
Well, you know, I hang out with a lot of people who hang out in town and stuff, and they're kind of like the working poor. You know, they live from paycheck to paycheck, and it's kind of refreshing, because I go to school with a lot of kids who take everything for granted, you know, and they kind of have everything handed to them by their parents. But then when I go to town and hang out, I'm hanging out with people who thank God for everything, you know, because everything is a gift, because they don't know whether one week they'll be able to, you know, buy a tank of gas, or the next week they'll have to ride their bike or walk, you know.
I did some work with the Sisters of Mother Teresa, and one of the days I was there, and all these families came with their kids, and we served them food and we played games with them. It was around Christmas time. I noticed like how that they have so little that even the tiniest things they find like amazing.
I actually had an opportunity to go to the Romero Center in Camden, like you were saying before, and we had an opportunity to go to like places like Phil Abundance and walk in shelters and things like that, and we got to like meet people, and the gratitude that they showed us was amazing. Like, they really appreciated what we were doing for them, and like I haven't experienced that kind of gratitude from anybody in my entire life. In a country as wealthy and as prosperous as America, it's scandalous that tens of millions of people lack some of the basic material necessities of life.
This is evident when 4 out of 5 food stamp recipients are children, and over 46 million Americans went uninsured last year.
Next, let's go back to our spotlight guest Stephanie, who will talk about how her mother exhibited strength under the most difficult of circumstances.
Having to support 9 children, 4 of her own and 5 of her sisters, she overcame tremendous obstacles just to get by.
We were always never able to have enough food, and with 4 kids plus 5 more on top of that, kind of made it hard. That for a year or so afterwards, she didn't receive assistance from like most Mercy Board or social services for an increase in her food stamps. So she had her income that was barely supporting her 4 kids, and then you take on 5 more mouths, kinds of stretches it out. So the amount of times that our lights got cut off was a lot, because she thought it was more important to feed us than to, you know, keep lights on in the house. And it's 9 kids, so we can keep ourselves entertained. And the bedtime was at 7, so Mom wasn't around a lot. I remember that she took on a second job. My cousins and them had been with us for more than, 3 years, and her mom died. And so she bore the responsibility of burying her financially. So she took on a second job, and you could see, and she didn't allow us to see much. You could see the hurt in her face, and then there were times where we barely saw her at all. Like, we would come home from school do our homework with our aunt, and then, 8 o'clock, we were in the bed. And, the only way that we'll know that Mom was there was that her wash rag in the bathroom was wet. She didn't play with us as much as she used to when it was just the four of us. We used to have this thing where every Saturday morning we would wake up in some kind of way, for some reason, end up in her bed and just laughing and having a good old time and talking about this boy in school that liked us, who gave us this fake little gold ring with the yellow diamond. I remember that, and I remember that it stopped. She didn't have time to play with us anymore.
I can't really imagine not having my mom there for me all the time, like whenever I needed her, you know what I mean? Like, my mom and I are really close, so every time I need her, I always go to her, and not like having her there all the time like Stephanie didn't, must have been like really hard for her.
Yeah, hearing Stephanie's story kind of makes you appreciate what you have even more. So, having heard Stephanie talk about her story and everything, do you think there are misconceptions about poverty and the poor in America?
Some people think like the poor people, they can be lazy because they just stand on the side of the road with like a sign, but they're working like twice as hard to get the same amount of money.
In addition to that too, thing that poor people are lazy, it's also like a cycle. Like, poverty is a cycle, and the only way that you can stop that cycle is if, something intervenes that's able to help. And I think that, a misconception is that they're always going to stay poor, when really we're the ones who can make the change there.
And people often think that people who are poor choose to be that way, when really they don't. They're stuck in that situation.
I think another misconception is that they aren't as intelligent as other people, which they probably are smarter than some other people, just because they're poor, they can't either afford college, or maybe they just graduated college and they just didn't have the opportunity to get a better job or anything.
Yeah, I think what makes me the most mad, though, is when I'm sitting in lunch at my school, and we always kind of get into these debates about like poverty or politics or whatever, and we'll start talking about it, and there's always those people who are sitting there with their like $15 lunches with the soda, the snack bars, the chips, the cookies, and the roast beef sandwich and everything. Like, this is more food than I could eat in like 3 days, whatever. And they get that every day, and they're sitting there in their nice, like, dressed clothes and everything, getting their $10,000 a year education, and they just say, oh, they're just lazy, If they worked a little harder, they'd be like me. And I'm like, you didn't even work for that, all right? Like, your parents gave you everything. Like, people don't understand that if you are growing up in that situation, it's tough to get out of. They weren't given the silver spoon like some people.
Yeah, it makes me really mad when people assume that poor people aren't intelligent. When I went to New Visions, a walk-in shelter in Camden, I met these two men. Their names are Jesse and Marcus, and they were playing chess visually in their mind. Like, they didn't have a chessboard. They had to remember what each person said. So what do you think causes poverty?
And are there ways to overcome poverty in the world?
That's what we ask the teens on the street.
Let's check it out.
What do you think causes poverty and keeps the poor oppressed?
Like people lose their jobs, like cutbacks, like sometimes people just can't find a job, or like they'll have kids at an early age and then they have to support it at an early age.
If you can't get a job, if someone won't hire you because of what you look like or your race or tattoos or any kind of difference, your record.
The government, no more money, and I guess that's what I blame it on.
I think people who don't get an education and can't get a job, and also the parents that you come from, and if they can send you to school or not, has a lot to do with it.
Where they live, it's not just the people. Some people would like to do better, they just don't have a chance to do it.
Just not getting the chances that the rest of us do, That's the problem. Just a lot of people aren't getting equal chances.
Do you think there are ways to overcome poverty in the world?
I think there are, just being, getting a job, you can do it.
I think there are ways, but I'm not sure what ways they could what they could do.
Having shelters and stuff like that helps.
Well, you can if you stay in school and you get a good education, I think that you can achieve higher level.
It's not that hard to just get up off your feet and just try, just keep trying, because if you always, if there's a will, there's a way, basically.
As long as you believe that you can make it through everything in life and you try to set your goals, your standards, I think you can do whatever you want.
one way that I know would be to leave the country, find a better place to live.
Just help each other and listen.
Just helping people.
I'm sure everybody can give a helping hand, and if we all do, I'm pretty sure that, you know, poverty can really, we could do a big dent to poverty.
You know, I liked how a lot of the teens mentioned opportunity, how people sometimes didn't get the same opportunity, because I think that whole if there's a will, there's a way thing, you know, it doesn't always work out, because sometimes, you know, your situation is so against you, you know, that it's tough to get out of that.
What about you guys? What do you think you can do to overcome poverty?
I think the first and most important thing is that you need to be educated on the subject. You know, you can't change something unless you know what's going on to begin with. Like, you can't go into the situation and say, we're just going to change it without doing your background research first.
Absolutely, and after getting educated, I think it's really important to take action, because it's true when they say actions speak louder than words, because if you say you're going to do all this stuff and you don't do it, there's going to be no outcome of it.
Yeah, that's what it was like when we came back from Camden. Everyone was like all riled up, and they were like, we're gonna do everything we can to help, and like the next day in the social justice club, like nobody showed up, and we were like, what happened to all the people who said they were gonna help? Like, I think we need to realize that, you know, we need to do something. We can't just say we're gonna do something.
And I think a lot of times people just have a tendency to throw money at the problem. You know, that's like the American reaction these days is, oh, you got a problem? Here. And just throw like some coins, you know? Like, I think people, they can't be afraid to get their hands dirty, you know? You gotta go in there, you gotta realize that it's not a quick fix, and you're in it for the long haul, and you gotta kind of just get in there, roll up your sleeves, and try and help somebody.
And, you know, going along with that, there's a thing like, if you give a man a fish, then he can eat for the day. But if you teach a man how to fish, then he can feed his family for the rest of life. And that's like what you were saying. We just give the money. What good does money do? Money runs out eventually. If we can teach skills and show them ways to get out of poverty, then that's how you stop the cycle.
In response to the national crisis, Catholic Charities USA has formed the campaign to reduce poverty in America.
Through public and private endorsement, this program aims to reduce poverty in the U.S. by 50% by the year 2020.
It also challenges the government to respond to the needs of the poor while educating policymakers and the public about what they can do in their own communities.
Catholic Charities was able to help our spotlight guest, Stephanie, climb out of poverty by providing transitional housing at a time when she and her son were homeless.
After 4 years, she is now employed full-time as a secretary for Catholic Charities, but still finds that the cost of living far exceeds her capacity for generating income.
Let's hear her story now.
I feel like I'm rich. This job is salary and it has health insurance. And some vacation time and weekends off, so no matter what, I can, you know, be home on the weekends with my babies and maybe participate in all the little programs that's going around in the city of Trenton. So I can manage my bills and maybe get to do something extra, like go to take my son to the movies. For me and other people who were probably born into poverty versus a person who, you know, came into this world with their room set up, you know, the whole bassinet, the nice little nursery. So they came into the world with something. With people like me and others, we come into the world with nothing. It's harder to make something out of nothing. It's easier to make something out of something. So no, working harder, it to me does not necessarily mean I can get out. I've worked hard to not become a statistic. My mom had 4 kids, plus 5 more later on in life. I have 1, and it's hard for me to do just even those things that I thought, you know, I should have had or could have had growing up, or would have wanted to have growing up. It's harder for me to do those things. I put him in karate, Stephen in karate, and then I had to take him out because I moved, and you know, the money could have been spent somewhere else. I see the baseball leagues around the park area and the football leagues around the park area, and I want to sign him up, but I do not know how much of an impact that's going to have on my finances.
In Jesus' time, if you were poor or sick or disadvantaged in any way, it was assumed that you were out of favor with God.
You or your parents must have sinned in order for God to have cursed you with poverty.
But Jesus had a different idea. Blessed are you who are poor, the kingdom of God is yours.
He explained that your money, or lack thereof, doesn't matter in God's eyes. Jesus tells us, woe to you who are rich, for where you have received your consolation.
It's what you do with the money you have that matters to God.
What does your faith teach you about poverty and reaching out to the poor?
That's what we ask the teens on the street.
Let's take a look.
What does your faith teach you about poverty and reaching out to the poor?
That everyone's equal, and it doesn't matter if you're rich or not, you're still equal and God still loves you.
Because I personally like to keep my standards high, keep my goals high. So I think my faith helps me in bringing it out so I can keep doing good things so I won't be in that kind of situation.
You should help people that are poor to help them better themselves.
Like, let's say somebody on the street, like he is asking for money, just give him what you have, basically. You can make that easily. Like, he's having a hard time with it, so just like help him out.
I think that you should help always people that are less comforting to you.
My mom always sends money to her family, Philippines, and like tries to help them as much as they can to get out of poverty and bring them over here.
Everybody just uniting and helping out.
My faith shows me that I'm helping some people that don't really have anything, so it makes me feel good inside, and like it makes me want to help more people.
It's our responsibility in our faith and just as people to just help those that need to be helped. And if you can, I say do it 100%.
My faith is a huge contributing factor to how much I help people. I was always taught that, the poor people are Jesus. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to help. Like, if you see Jesus on the street, you're going to help him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's what my parents taught me too. So how about you guys? How does your faith factor into how you reach out to the poor?
Well, in my church, we have Christmas in July, where we pick items and supplies off the trade. Then we donate whatever we have to the church, and they will ship it off to places that need help and are poor.
In my church, we have like different times where we go and we do mulch on a playground or something, or we'll go and we'll make bags for Thanksgiving. But if I didn't do the youth group, I probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah, like in my youth group, we do this thing called Food Fest, and during it, we go to houses and ask for food. Then after that, we take all the food we collect, tally it up, and send it off to a soup kitchen or a food bank.
Jesus was a hands-on type of guy, and I think our faith teaches us to be hands-on while helping people, not sign the check away and give the money, but to actually get out there and work with the people. I think that's what he would want from us.
Exactly, and I grew up with my parents always telling me to treat everyone as your neighbor or as your brother or as your sister. And if your brother or sister or neighbor were in need, you wouldn't just write them off a check and send them on their way. You would comfort them, with more than just supplies, but also the emotions that they need there.
Next, Stephanie talks about her personal goals and her own outreach to the poor.
And how she believes it's everyone's responsibility to give back to their community.
I would want to go for social work. Going through the process of, trying to get me and my son together and going through the process of growing up in poverty. I have a lot of resources up here, and I have a lot of ideas. Like even now, some of the people in my apartment building come to me and say, hey, can Catholic Charities really help me out? And knowing their situation or a piece of their situation, I can tell them which way to go. I want to be a lot like my mom. My motivation now is my mom. If I fail, I make my mom look bad because she did it with 9 kids and I can't do it with 1. She lives with me now because she can't, it's hard to sustain. So I don't have a problem with my mom staying with me. She cooks and everything because I can't cook. My belief has always been if you have it and someone needs, go ahead and give it. Do unto others as you would want done unto you. And it can be something as small as, taking a box of cereal across the street to that family. Or if they say, hey, Stephanie, we want you to come and volunteer and feed in this food line to feed the homeless, I would do it. You gave to me, so now it's time for me to give back. I believe in giving back. My advice is community service, community service, community service. How about 30 minutes a week for the rest of your life, even if it means you getting up early morning on a Saturday? Community service can mean going to visit the elderly in a hospital. Community service can mean going to clean up an area around a elderly home. Community service could mean getting with a couple of your soccer buddy friends and just running a soccer camp mentoring program on Saturdays. It's like getting up and going to church every Sunday. How about every Saturday you make that a ritual, getting up and going somewhere to do some form of community service?
You know, I really like what she said about proactive community service, you know, not just throwing money at a situation, but going out and doing something for the community. I think that's important to make service a habit, you know, to go out every week, even if it's for only a little bit, you know, like after the show every week, because I know you're watching the show every week, you turn it off and you go do service for a half hour or an hour. I think that would really help.
Yeah, in our school we do can drive. We have a can drive, and we do it for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter, and we turn it into a competition, and whoever class has the most food will have dress on days.
Yeah, down in my church, we had this big drive for clothing and toys, and we just piled all of the bags outside my church, and there had to be over 300 bags. It was just great.
Like Stephanie said, community service, community service, community service. Get involved and take action.
Volunteer at a local soup kitchen or food bank.
Reach out to those living in poverty in your community by participating in parish and community activities and services.
Share what you have learned with others in your community and encourage them to take action too.
Help your youth group organize an activity, reaching out to the underprivileged children in your area.
Maybe you can help them with after-school programs by tutoring children or helping with sports activities.
Contact your local Catholic Charities organization and find out how you can get involved in advocacy activities at the local, state, and national levels.
How do you reach out to brothers and sisters in poverty?
We'd like to post your story on our website.
The address is www.realfaithtv.com.
Or for more information on how you can help fight poverty in America, call Catholic Charities USA at 703-549-1390.
And we'll leave you today with the words of the prophet Isaiah.
Sharing your bread with the hungry, sheltering the oppressed and the homeless.
Clothing the naked when you see them, and not turning your back on your own.
Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your wound shall quickly be healed.
Your vindication shall go before you, and the glory of God shall be your rear guard.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on Real Faith TV. God bless.